Hey guys, what's up? I've been playing Mechabellum for a couple of months now, and you might be one of the people that have found Mechabellum recently and are one of the 3,700 people trying your luck at the game right now. Or perhaps you're wondering how to start. The game is actually really easy to get into, but I just want to do a small little beginner guide in order to help you get those first steps into this really cool robot auto battler game. When you launch Mechabellum, you'll end up in the lobby and you'll be asked to join a region. 501 being the English-speaking region, and you will be automatically allocated to the one that it thinks is most suitable for you. But you can also change if you like. There's different languages being represented around the world. Then, Mechabellum has a couple of different game modes. If you go to multiplayer and you press start, you will find 1v1, 2v2 and 4-player brawl, which is an FFA mode where it will allow you to play against the AI in the middle first. You will then get extra money based on how many kills you get. And then you will face the other 3 players in a Mortal Kombat showdown. The last player remaining gets bonus points for still being alive, and the first one to 8,000 points will be able to win the FFA. So it's a kind of a departure from the classic deathmatch of 1-on-1 and 2-on-2. All 3 modes are really fun. I personally prefer 1-on-1, but they're all really good. There's also something for the solo player. You've got the Commander Academy, which is kind of the tutorial, which I completed several missions in. It slowly explains several different aspects of the game and how to play it. To be honest, this didn't spark joy in me. I think it is a good tutorial, but it didn't really give me an idea about how the game was supposed to be played. But that's because I have ADHD probably, and am very impatient. I do recommend you to take a look at some of these, but overall I feel like you learn the most by just jumping into it. But then personally, I don't have any qualms about losing in multiplayer. If you are a bit more sensitive to that experience, I would recommend you to check out the tutorial more. But I prefer usually getting my face smashed in really early in a multiplayer game as a way of learning and then picking it up as I go. You've also got a survival mode, which I have not broken my teeth on yet. In the survival mode, you can have increasing difficulty challenges, and this can be a fun way to experience the game one-on-one. I will say the game is mostly geared towards multiplayer, but if you prefer just playing chill by yourself against AI, this is one of the things you could do. There's some community challenges you can practice, and you can also go into a dedicated testing mode. I'll show a practice game against an AI to kind of explain how a general game of Mechabellum is going to be played. In Mechabellum, you do not pick a faction, you're all part of the same faction. A game begins and you have about 20 seconds to decide, though in practice you get longer. There's about, 15-20 different starting specialists. Each offer a slightly altered way to play the game. There's a communal pool of about 25 different robots that you can pick from in a Mechabellum game. And some of the specialists that you pick actually allow you to specialize in some of those. For instance, the Rhino specialist gets a free Rhino robot in the 4th round. So that's a promise of something to come. But until then, you have no benefits, so choose carefully. Whereas the speed specialist doesn't get any free units, but your units will move faster. The quick supply specialist gets double income in the 1st round, but then never gets any other advantage after that. So use it well in order to get a tempo and momentum advantage. Whereas the fortified specialist is different yet again. All your units have 17% more HP. These are just 4 of the 15 or 20 or so specialists that there are going to be in Mechabellum, and these are the choices you have. Based on internal heuristics, telemetry, the developers of Mechabellum have also decided that some starting kits are better than others, and in order to further fine-tune the balance, some will start with more initial hit points than others. So if you see someone has 4,600 health, whereas the others all have more, that's probably because the bonuses that are being offered on the 4th specialist card are a little better than the others, and then the health evens things out. Larger health pools give you more time to develop your board and make some mistakes and then still come back from it. So it's going to raise your win chance on average, and that's how it kind of balances out. There's one more, perhaps the most important aspect of your first starting picking card. It's not just about what specialist you are or how much health you have or how hot the portrait is of the different 4 characters, but you start with 2 specific units. Basically, it gives you a tier 1 and a tier 2 unit, and you will start with 3 and 2 units of that complement respectively. So if you pick the speed specialist, you'll start with 3 marksmen, and 2 sets of mustangs. The Rhino, 3 fangs and 2 sets of sledgehammers, and so on and so forth. Sometimes you'll see duplicate units being represented in different starting cards, and sometimes there are more differences. As you get more experience, you'll learn which robots you like to fight with, and I'm sure that your favorite unit is going to change over time as you play more. Read, for instance, the Steel Ball, which is a high-speed anti-unit bot. When Mechabellum says anti-unit, that means high single target damage. So it is particularly good at taking down a few tanky targets. Then you look at something like a Sledgehammer and says it's a fairly sturdy, heavy tank. It can deal splash damage in a small range, in a small area, at medium and long range, right? So it's going to be better at killing low health targets that kind of clump together because it has splash damage, whereas the Steel Ball has no splash damage. It's not just what each robot and each mech are, they also get certain tech upgrades. Units can level up they can promote and level up in levels, so they go from level 1 to 2 if you spend some money on it, and this greatly increases their power. But they also have specific technology upgrades that allows you to change the way that they are played. For example, you can get more range, or you can apply electromagnetism on your auto attacks, which disables enemy technology upgrades like this one. You can also get field maintenance, so they start regenerating over time, or mechanical rage, faster movement speed and faster attack speed. The Rhino gets a particularly cool upgrade that allows it to explode upon death, dealing massive area of effect damage. Well, once you've decided your pick, and keep in mind that in a multiplayer game, it's only going to give you 20 seconds to do so, the game begins. You'll be given your first units. There's a green square or rectangle around each unit, which shows that this unit can still be moved. The easiest way to do it is just to click the recommended formation button here at the top right, and choose a recommended formation. This is in the tutorial, this might be a premeditated pick by the developers, but once you start playing multiplayer, it actually algorithmically pulls data from the ladder from other people's games who also had similar units like yours, and then it'll come out with a formation. Now, if you don't want to use the recommended formation, or you want to understand what you're actually doing, you should probably read what your units do, preferably at peace when you're not in a hot multiplayer game. But first you just get started, right? So basically, I'm just going to show you what happens when you start a game without making things too complicated, and then I'll add a little bit more detail. So say for instance, we put our units like this, and then we unlock one free unit, and we end deployment, and it begins. So now the robots start fighting each other. You've got WASD and mouse camera control. You can zoom in with the mouse wheel, you can zoom out. You can hold mouse wheel to rotate your camera. You can also use Q and E on your keyboard to rotate the camera. And WASD give peripheral movement northeast, southwest. So our robots are fighting his. He is evil, therefore he has red health bars. And I'm good, so I've got green health bars. So the fight is happening and so on and so forth. Whoever ends up winning the round will end up inflicting health damage to their opponent. So we just lost this round against tutorial practice bot, easy by the way. We just lost this round, and that means that when it ends, our 47 health at the top left will sustain some damage based on how many units the opponent has remaining on the field. The more and the more expensive units they have, the more hits I will take on my health. And that's essentially the essence of Mechabellum. When you bring the enemy health to 0, they are defeated and you win the game. And it will go for as many rounds as it needs in order to find that ultimate conclusion. I've come back from a 1 HP deficit before and still managed to make a comeback. Those are extra exhilarating. So then at the beginning of every subsequent round, round 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., the furthest I've ever been is round 13, is another choice. It is a random drop that offers some kind of upgrade. Out of every 3 rounds, one time you'll be offered free units, which will unlock a new unit and give you several instances of that unit. And 2 out of every 3 rounds, you'll be offered some form of an upgrade. It could be like a shield airdrop that will allow you to put an energy shield, a haste module that will make your one specific unit stack faster. The Assault Vulcan actually turns your giant fire-breathing robot into having more health and move speed, making it really jump into the breach, but it doesn't have as much range as before. So there's give and take in this one. So you decide which of these 4 you think is nice, and then you will pick them. If you like, you can hide the panel here so you can check your game state. And then once you've made your decision, you make your decision, right? If you don't like any of these 4, as you think you won't be making good use of them, you can also skip, which will give you 50 extra supplies. Keep in mind that you start every game with 200 supplies, which is like your money. And then in round 2, you have got 400, round 3, 600. So basically it's the multiple of the round number by 200. Round 2, 400, and so on. Make sense? So there's some exceptions. If you don't spend all your supplies in round 1, it will actually levy over to each subsequent round. And the same is true for every subsequent round as well. So you can save up money to do a big attack in one of the given rounds. So let's say we go for shield airdrop. Then now we have a new ability here that will be listed on the left. All your abilities will be listed here on the left. So we click the shield airdrop, and then we can choose where we want to put it. And that is going to spawn in a shield 1 second into the game once the round actually begins. Keep in mind that while I'm now explaining things at length, generally you only have 99 seconds to make your pick of random upgrade and to place the rest of your board. Now, how does a round 2 generally look? In round 1 we were given a bunch of units and I spawned in some units without much further comment to you guys, but in every subsequent round decision making continues. Here's what you can do in a round. Additionally, of course, in addition to what I've already said, you can unlock 1 unit per round from all these units. These are all the new units that you can hire. As you can see, that's 7 times 3, 7 in a row, and 3 rows, so that's 21 units. And there's several units that are not in this list, like the Fire Badger, the Typhoon, the Farseer, and the Sabertooth. So in total, there's 25 different units that you could eventually get. 21 immediately accessible, and 4 hidden rare ones that can only come in the form of drop or if you are a specialist of that sort. So every round you can, but you don't have to, unlock 1 unit. There is a cost though. Unlocking a Rhino will cost you 50 supplies and its eventual purchase 400. Unlocking the War Factory though costs 200 supplies to unlock, so that's generally something for later rounds. There's 4 units that are free to unlock, so if you're not making use of those units, you can still unlock them for free in the first couple of rounds. These are the first 4, the Marksman, the Fang, the Crawler, and the Arclight. After that, you've got the 50 cost, then you start having a 100 cost unlock, and then eventually you start having a 200 cost unlock for the final giant units. So that is something you'll do every round. You'll do 1 unlock, and then the unlock button disappears because you can only do 1 per round. Then every round you've got squad 2. What does that mean? It means you can place 2 units per round. So I can pick, how do I spend my 400 supplies? Which 2 units do I make? Additionally, there is a way to make an extra 3rd unit. You've got these 2 towers here. They've got a lot of special abilities, and we're not going to go too deep into them yet. But if you click the left tower and the mass recruitment here, increases the number of units that can be purchased in this round by 1, but it's only valid for 1 round. So there is a way around the cap of 2 units per round, but generally that is the standard amount. So how do you prepare for the next round? So I just lost, and what was the problem? Well, the problem is he has these steel balls that will charge a laser on a single target and then destroy it. So in the first round, I deliberately griefed myself in order to be able to show the sense of progression. I only placed a small amount of heavy HP tanks, and arclights. And so I'm very vulnerable to sledgehammers. So now what I can do to deal with that is I can put some small units in front. So if I place 2 crawlers here, now suddenly these steel balls will be hitting less valuable units. So I'm taking the crawlers, which if you know any StarCraft is just like Zerglings. So Zerglings are a great form of chaff. We call this chaff. Chaff is actually the word that is associated with wheat. You know, the wheat that grows in the fields, which we can make bread of. That wheat has a chaff, which is the undesirable part that we don't eat. So cutting the wheat from a chaff is a proverb, or it's like, let's say, a saying. And this is generally what is being used to describe crappy units that will be easily discarded. But you need some chaff in Mechabellum because it allows you to take some of those big hits that would otherwise go to more valuable units. So we're going to place crawlers here, and we're going to place fangs over here. You can rotate them with the middle mouse button or the T hotkey for optimum placement. What is optimum? Well, you have to learn once you play, but I'm just teaching you the basics. And then there's one more thing you can do. You've got these devices here. Devices are single purpose expenditures that allow you to gain some extra power in any given round. Say for instance the sentry missile, a single-use sentry missile that detonates near an enemy, dealing 5,000 damage and slowing enemy units for 14 seconds. 5,000 damage, interesting. How much health do these steel balls have? 4,571 HP. Okay, so let's put a missile on them. If I put it here, it's within the range, and the moment the round begins, they'll blow up. But wait, could we do even better? If we aim it out of their range, once the steel balls will walk forward and take aim to attack my crawlers, then maybe his crawlers will synchronize up with his steel balls. So now you can see that the sense of movement and timing progression actually matters. So we're going to do that, we're going to end deployment, and we're going to see whether our sentry missile is well timed. So the sentry missile activates and will blow up the steel balls. But the crawlers didn't arrive yet. So okay, try again. But as we can see now, because our crawlers are here, his steel balls didn't end up latching onto our arc lights, who can now kill the crawlers. So we have made an improvement in our formation. These fangs likewise have blocked his steel balls, and now suddenly we've won a round. So this is essentially the essence of Mechabellum. After you've initially placed your units, they are no longer green because you can no longer choose to move them. Keep in mind that all these units cannot be moved anymore, except with some very rare exceptions. So as you build your board, you are locked into certain positions, and you will then need to adapt additional placements to make sense with your formation. So what is a good formation in Mechabellum? Well, let's go ahead and pick this sandworm for instance. A sandworm is a giant unit that has its own certain stats. It has splash damage, it has high single target damage, it's tanky, and it goes underground to dodge hits momentarily when it's not in a fight. So where would be the optimal place to place this? Keep in mind that this entire part is your playground. So generally, when you're looking at optimum placements, let me go ahead and actually do a restart, which will allow me to show you a better placement. So we're gonna do a restart, and we'll actually do some proper placement instead of the exemplary placement that I showed. Why is it not just called cannon fodder? Yeah, cannon fodder is also the same word as chaff. We've used many words like in different games: chaff, meat shield, front line, cannon fodder. You know, this is just the word that became meta in Mechabellum. So what is sensible placement? Say for instance, this is my starting pack. I've got 2 and 3 crawlers and 2 sets of mustangs as well. All right, so let's say I combine that with fangs. So now I make 2 fangs, and this is what I'm going to be starting with. So what makes sense? So basically, in a game of Mechabellum, you will look at the enemy units that will be shown in the default location, and you will try to gain information about how fast each unit is. The dream in Mechabellum is to have most of your units engage simultaneously, so that you can start unloading damage on him, while having your weak multitudinous units take heavy single target damage from him, and to have your tanky units take multiple little hits from him. So as you try to coordinate that, movement speed is one of the greatest determiners together with attack range. So if you take a look at the unit card, this dictates their range. The crawler has melee range, whereas the Mustang has 95 range, which is something you're going to have to get a feeling for eventually, how much that actually is. The second most important stat is movement speed, 16 meters per second for the Mustang. Crawler, 16 meters per second. Fangs, 6 meters per second. So although we don't know from experience as a new player how much that is, we at least know that crawlers and Mustangs are twice as fast as fangs. So in order to have our fangs fight simultaneously with the crawlers and Mustangs, roughly, what we would not do is to put the fangs in the back and then to put the crawlers in the front, because then the crawlers get there very fast. So basically, we'll place our fangs, for instance, somewhere here, kind of in the front. Fangs are cheap ranged chaff, aka cannon fodder. So having them take the initial hit is nice. Then we could follow up with crawlers from behind, and these are pretty optimal placements. And the reason that it's nice to put crawlers behind the tower, all units in Mechabellum go to the nearest enemy. And these crawlers can sometimes respond to threats from a flank, which is something I have not discussed yet. And also, they will try to walk around this tower from both sides. So putting them here, it kind of splits them in two. So that's something pretty cool, because when they're split in two, they won't die as easily to splash damage attacks from enemy splash. Mustangs are also 16 meters per second, but they have range. So they could follow crawlers on the same slot, and then they will advance at the same time. But it's also fine for them to be behind. Or they could be in front, in which case they will first start shooting, and then as an enemy melee unit approaches them, the crawler steps in. Get down, Mr. President! So there's lots of different theories I encourage you to experiment and try out, but now at least you have the building blocks of being able to make decisions for yourself. So say for instance I do this, I can tell you this is pretty good formation. Maybe the fangs can be even further forward. And of course it also greatly depends on where he positions. He could position everything right here, in which case all his units will absolutely decimate my stack of fangs and will then make an attack on my tower and my left side, while my right side isn't fighting anything. So you never know how an opponent is going to position at the start, but that's the fun part about Mechabellum, is discovering that for yourself. I'm just teaching you the basics. So once we hit end deployment, he did indeed position here. Of course, this is an AI, so he's not a he, it's an it. But now you can see that for these units, it was closer to engage them, whereas these units thought it's closer to engage those. So the fight breaks out. We have crawlers and fangs impacting into his fangs. His tarantulas are clearing up my units. They have really good splash. As you can see, they're taking down multiple crawlers per hit. And it looks like our right side won, but his left side won. And that means we are going to lose the round. Now this gives me a chance to talk about probably one of the final things that I think I want to be getting into for this very, very early beginner guide. If you want to know more, I can do another guide, but I want to keep it short, just kind of help you to onboard and start having fun with Mechabellum. If you want more advanced guides, I can do that next time. But the final thing I want to explain is this. Bam! Tower dies, you see a pulse. What does that pulse do? Well, basically, it makes units very slow while they have that static electricity. There is a 9-second debuff. Destruction of a core building will cause forces to be paralyzed for 9 seconds. In the paralyzed state, the unit movement speed is reduced by 80%, attack damage by 90%, and it takes an additional 50% damage when attacked. So our fangs right now are debuffed, so we're doing almost no damage on his. And that's the nail in the coffin for us if we weren't already down. So that's what Mechabellum is. It's a very fun, simple to get into, but relatively deep auto-battling game where proper formations, proper placement, and proper responses to a developing enemy board, better game knowledge and time management and resource management will help you to win more games. There's a lot of new players in the game right now, so if you feel like giving it a try, then hopefully you found this guide to be somewhat helpful in order to get started. By the way, this was not a sponsored video. That's just how I talk. I always just kind of take that ambassador tone. I have been sponsored in the past by Mechabellum for 4 hours, but not before I already put in 200 hours into the game myself. So I'm at about 220 hours now. I discovered this game because my viewers actually told me about it, and it was one of 10 games I tried out, and this one really stuck to me and I got really hooked on it. And I'm not gonna say addicted because I could stop anytime, but I've been playing it a lot. It's a lot of fun. Okay, hope you enjoyed this guide. See you guys next time. Bye.